Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
Happy Holy Week, everyone. It's Holy Wednesday. This is the last of our Lenten series. Thank you to those of you who have hung in there and been with us along the journey. How many of you were here on Sunday, Palm Sunday? You got to be a part of the Sunday service. Got to see our kids come in with the palm fronds. Wasn't that so beautiful? Getting to see our kids shining their light. My 3-year-old daughter, Felicity, she's like old enough to really get it and get into it. It was so fun for her. I just love that. Well, for those of you who didn't get to kick off Holy Week with us, who weren't here for Palm Sunday, there was another little girl who didn't get to go to church on Palm Sunday. Her name was Annie, and she was a 5-year-old girl who got a sore throat. And so she had to stay home with her mom while the rest of her family went to church for Palm Sunday. And when they came home, they all had palm fronds with them. And she asked them what they were for, and her dad explained that he said, well, the people held them over Jesus as he passed by riding on a colt. And she made a frown, she stomped her foot, and she said, wouldn't that just be the way? The one Sunday that I don't go to church, Jesus shows up and offers pony rides. So, you didn't miss any pony rides on Sunday, but there will be pony rides this Sunday for Easter. So bring your kids, for the kids, okay? We'll be having pony rides. So are you ready for Easter on Sunday? We're in our step of preparations. We're getting ready for Easter. Do you know what your Easter outfit, are you going to wear an Easter bonnet? You ready for Easter? We prepared in our family we went out to the store and we picked up a dozen eggs and an egg dyeing kit. This is the first year that my daughter's really old enough to dye eggs, and so she's so excited that she went to her grandma, who watches her, and she's told her grandma that she needed her grandma to buy a dozen eggs and an egg dyeing kit. So we're gonna have a lot of hard-boiled eggs in our family. If you want any, let me know. So there are the outer preparations for Easter, right? So what about the inner preparations? What about the spiritual preparations? Are you prepared for your Easter? Are you prepared for your resurrection and all that that means? Amen. Well, there's a few days before we get there, right? We're here on Wednesday, and before we get to the resurrection on Easter, we're headed towards Friday. And you know what happened on Good Friday? Yeah. So it wasn't so great for Jesus, right? We know that Jesus died on Friday, and that's part of the journey. That's part of the journey. We're not quite at that risen Jesus. So I had to start off with a joke because I was thinking about this week and I was like, oh man, I don't think there's anything funny about Holy Week. This is some heavy stuff. So just thinking about our own spiritual journey and really remembering that he is our master teacher and that he demonstrated for us what it is to fully demonstrate the Christ consciousness. And part of that is walking through our pain. Part of that is the crucifixion experience, is facing our dying beliefs and error thinking. And I'm so grateful that Siobhan brought to us Hills and Valleys. What a perfect song to lead us into this exploration and this week where we're looking at that our spiritual experience is hills and valleys, that we have those low experiences where we need to dive into prayer to bring us back up to the hill, to the mountaintop. Okay, so the affirmation is, I fast from problems that overwhelm, I feast on the power of prayer. Repeat after me, I fast from problems that overwhelm. I fast from problems that overwhelm. I feast on the power of prayer. Breathe that in. Fast from problems that overwhelm. So what are your problems that overwhelm? What are you ready to cross out, to let go of, to release? What are your inner crucifixions? What are the old beliefs that you're dying to? You know, sometimes it's not one thing, it's everything at once. It could be your work, your relationships, your health, your family, and the politics. You know, everything seems to be, wow, it just all seems to be a problem that becomes overwhelming. In the Unity booklet for Lent, for this part of the series, the article is by Reverend Mark Fuss, and in it he says, oftentimes before that death occurs, my mind is like a Ferris wheel on overdrive. So I love this image. Each seat is filled with a problem or a concern. They could be real or imagined problems. Mine are just some I borrowed. As the wheel spins, I revisit each problem as it goes by. Have you ever done that? That cycle of thinking in your consciousness, and there's work and family, health, and I know all these things going by, and it's like everything can be really overwhelming. And so we're here to fast from that overwhelming and die to our old beliefs. And so I thought about, well, what are some of the old beliefs that I'm dying to, that I'm releasing, and that I'm letting go of? And I thought what I wanted to share that seemed like maybe fun or light or whatever. And Spirit was like, no, share this. And I'm like, no, I really would like to share this. And Spirit's like, no, share this. So I go, okay, Spirit. So I'll share that, because that's what I'm here to serve. And I always hope that whatever Spirit guides me to share, that it's received by whoever needs to hear it. So one of the old beliefs that I'm dying to is this inner critical parent, that this way of thinking that is harsh and criticizing and self-judging. And one of the ways that I'm healing through it is through a 12-step program that I'm a part of, which is called Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families. And my parents are not alcoholics. My grandfather was an alcoholic. I never knew him. And one of the ways that we can tend to deal with problems that overwhelm us is to numb out with substance, with alcohol or drugs or whatever, what have you. And I didn't know him, but I only imagine that the kind of overwhelm he must have been in to want to numb out in that way and deal with his problems in that way must have been deep. And I've learned to feel a lot of compassion for him. And knowing that he didn't have unity, he didn't have 12 steps way back then when he was going through this, and grateful that we have these tools. And to know that when we are fasting from the overwhelm of problems, that the way of numbing out with substances is not the healthy path, that if that is a path that you've experienced, that there is support and there is help here at the church. We have support, we have counseling, we have a way to direct you to find that support if you need it, and know that that is here for you. So as an adult child of alcoholic dysfunctional family, the process of the program is dying to that critical parent, and what you are becoming is the loving parent. So as I'm continuing on my spiritual path, and I've done therapy and lots of other modalities in addition to Unity, that I notice that critical parent is quieter and quieter and less, and I'm becoming more free and able to share my gift and experience more of that loving voice. And so that's, for me, my experience of the crucifixion, of that, I mean, there are other things, but of that, letting that belief die out, of that voice to come and love myself more, and I'm doing that in this spiritual process. Now, Jesus became overwhelmed, very overwhelmed. You can imagine with his upcoming crucifixion that he came in, the triumphal entry, right, in Jerusalem, the palms, he, arrived and he was loved. People were laying down their cloaks so that he could walk on them, right? And then he went into the temple and he cleansed the temple. So metaphysically, he was cleansing his consciousness, right, of anything that was unlike spirit. He was fasting from problems that overwhelm, right? He cleansed it. He was preaching in that temple and he was healing. And the more he spoke his truth, the more that he could see that the scribes and the Pharisees and the chief priests, the critical parents, that critical authority was speaking up and was saying, whoa, 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 questioning him. I want to have proof. I want to have evidence. I want signs. Are you the Messiah? Can you do the things that you say that you do? Do you do that? When you're going through problems that overwhelm, do you say, well, I'll forgive, but I want proof that it's going to work out in this, that there's going to be harmony and healing here if I do the process of forgiving? Or I want proof that if I reach out and feel compassion, that it's going to be returned to me. What am I going to get out of it? When we're stuck in that question of what am I going to get out of it, that's an ego question, right? We do it for our own soul's growth. We do it to be the love and the light, and we surrender that outcome to Spirit. Charles Fillmore, our Unity co-founder, says that in this state of mind, in this Pharisee state of mind, that you will not discern the Christ presence because you're looking for something outside of yourself. The Christ presence is an inner revelation. Jesus knew that his disciples would betray him. He knew he had to walk his path alone. And so how do we fast from overwhelming thoughts that leave us in a situation at times where we feel like no one can understand us and we may even feel alone? Ask, am I focused on the problem or am I focused on God? Are you focused on the problem? You focused on God. There's a wonderful Unity writing called The Golden Key by Emmett Fox, and it's a little pamphlet, and I'm sure they have it in the bookstore. You can find it. And it explains the process of fasting from thinking and worrying and mulling over the problem and just simply moving into prayer and being saturated in love and oneness and peace, just letting go of that problem for a while. Shifting the energy, going apart for a while in prayer. So moving out of the valley and to the hill. I feast on the power of prayer. Let's say that together. I feast on the power of prayer. So we're fasting from all the problems, feasting on prayer. So as Jesus celebrated Passover with his disciples, he told them that they would desert him, and they all denied it. Isn't that great? You tell your friends, oh, you're going to, and they lied to him, right? They lied to Jesus. His friends lied to him. No, I'm not going to betray Jesus. I'm not going to betray you. I'm not going to deny you, said Peter, right? And so Jesus went to Gethsemane to pray. He said, all right, enough of this. I can't, even my friends are lying to me. I have all this in front of me. I see what's going to happen. I see my path. I see that I'm heading toward the crucifixion. Gethsemane is a garden in Jerusalem that's at the foot of the Mount of Olives, which is, so it's at a low place, at the foot of a mountain. And Gethsemane, metaphysically, the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary says that Gethsemane represents the struggle that takes place within the consciousness when truth is realized as the one reality. All the good is pressed out and saved, and the error is denied away. This is often agony, the suffering that the soul undergoes in giving up its cherished idols or in letting go of human consciousness. It says the great work of everyone is to incorporate the Christ mind in soul and body, so Christ consciousness into the soul and body. The process of eliminating the old consciousness and entering into the new may be compared to Gethsemane, whose meaning is oil press. I love that image of that pressing out of all that the old beliefs, like an oil press, that what is left is all the Christ consciousness, all the good. So that's the process as Jesus feasted on prayer. So he took the disciples with him. He said, stay there. And he took 3 with him, and he took Peter, James, and John, who represent faith and wisdom and love. He took them with him, and he said for them to sit here, and I'm going to go over there and pray. Just sit here, stay awake. I'm going to go over there and pray. So, and he said, and when he had just his 3 closest friends with him, just Peter, James, and John, then he started to show, the scripture says he began to be grieved and agitated. And I love that, because I think we could think of Jesus as just, he was just so above everything and so full of light and bliss. But no, he was ticked, right? He was angry. He was agitated and grieved. So maybe he was crying. Maybe he, shouted out. I don't know, the scripture picked that up. That was reported of Jesus' experience, and that this Gethsemane experience shows that when we are headed towards crucifixion, that we've got to allow the space to feel our feelings, a safe space. He found a safe space in Gethsemane with his 3 closest friends to allow his anger and his grief to just come up and to offer them to be healed. And so he went alone to pray. He threw himself on the ground, it says, and he prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me, yet not what I want, but what you want." Or some versions say, "Not my will, but thy will." So he didn't want this. I don't know that anybody really wants that, to go through that pain. We resist. Right? We show resistance to the crucifixions. We can see them coming, right? We can see the end of something. Oh, I don't know. We can have resistance. We can fight it. And so he fought it 3 times. He prayed the same prayer. It reports, my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me, yet not what I want, but what you want. And so he came to the disciples, and every time he came back to the 3, they were sleeping. And I love that it says, "So you couldn't stay awake with me for 1 hour." Like Jesus was, he was angry, right? He was expressing his feelings. He was emoting, right? You couldn't stay awake for 1 hour. All I asked, you're my friends. No, they couldn't stay awake. 3 times they couldn't stay awake, right? And so finally, we see that Jesus didn't bypass his feelings here. He really had to go through it. He had to go through it before he was headed to the crucifixion and finally resurrection, right? And so after he had prayed, he tells them, "Get up, let's go. See, my betrayer is at hand." And that's when he was turned over. So Jesus had to pray to let go of his resistance, his grief, his anger. And the story tells that there is pain on the spiritual path. That if you're experiencing pain on the spiritual path, then it's part of the journey, the valleys before the hills, right? And it's just a part of letting go of some part of our personality, some part of our ego structure that no longer works, or part of our personal life to unfold more of our spiritual potential, more of the Christ. Charles Fillmore says that the amount of pain that we have as we go through these experiences is directly related to our level of attachment to that part of ourselves and whether we have engaged our heart or not. And so we see Jesus, agitated, grieving, and is he able to move into his heart? Well, finally, we know that Jesus, in the end, in prayer, he surrenders. And that's the final step before his death. I love this passage I had to share with you from Atom Smashing Power of Mind by Charles Fillmore. Isn't that such a great title for a book? Atom Smashing Power of Mind. It's just showing the power that we have of our Christ consciousness. And it says, having once seen truth, having once had the illumination, you find that the next step is to demonstrate it and not be cast down or discouraged by the opposite. When the crucifixion comes and you are suffering the pangs of dying error, you may cry out, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Forgetting for the time the promises in the Mount of Transfiguration when Jesus was transfigured. This is when you need to realize that you are passing through a transformation process. So you are walking through the valley of the shadow, not hanging out there, right, and pitching a tent. You're walking through it. And that will be followed by a resurrection of all that is worth saving. I love that line, and that's why I had to share that quote with you. A resurrection of all that is worth saving. Like I think about, nobody wanted that fire at the cathedral in Notre Dame, right? Nobody wanted that. And we know they will rebuild. We know that there will be a resurrection of all that is worth saving, and that people are coming together, and that there is healing and there is beauty that will be revealed, and that whatever was there that was lost, that maybe there are some things that they're just going to let it go and rise up with what's worth saving, and that's our spiritual process. We let go of what's unneeded, unnecessary, no longer serves. Resurrect what's worth saving. So prayer, how do we feast on prayer? Jesus said that the way we feast on prayer is that we go into the inner, we go into our inner sanctuary, into the inner room. It says, some translations say the inner chamber. And so when I think of chamber, I think of the heart. The heart has 4 chambers, right? We go into the chamber of the heart. And that, he said, and this is in the Sermon on the Mount, that the Father already knows what you need. Not a time to feel like you just need to just go into asking for all these things that you need. God already knows. And so the feasting on the power of prayer is simply going into that inner chamber and resting in the silence, resting in the oneness, in the peace, in the light, and the love, feasting in that letting go of the problems that overwhelm, feasting in the peace of the silence. God knows your needs. So I close with this prayer that I love. It's located at Unity Village. There's a place where there's this garden over by the labyrinth, and you walk down this path, and at the end there's this plaque, and there's a poem on there called The Answer, and it was written by Lowell Fillmore, who is one of Charles Fillmore's sons. And this is what he wrote. When for a purpose I had prayed and prayed and prayed, until my words seemed worn and bare with arduous use, and I had knocked and asked and knocked again, with all my fervor and persistence brought no hope, I paused to give my weary brain a rest and ceased my anxious human cry. In that still moment, after self had tried and failed, there came a glorious vision of God's power, and lo, my prayer was answered in that hour. I invite you this week, as we close our time of Lent, we head towards Easter, to go into your inner chamber, to let go of the problems that overwhelm, and feast on the love, the light, the peace, and the joy of God that you are. God bless you.
Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.